The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Thursday, January 22nd, 2025. Your reader for this first hour is Jim Duffy. And beginning with our front page, brewing snowstorm may be most impactful of season. From Janine Santucci and Dinah Voiles-Pulver of USA Today. As forecasters warn of a sprawling snow and ice storm in store for a large swath of the country later this week, millions of Americans were under advisories and warnings on January 21st for frigid weather and dangerous snow conditions. The storm will follow a mass of cold air that will send temperatures plunging and spread heavy snow and icy conditions across more than 24 states, from Texas up through the Northeast, AccuWeather meteorologists said. Its exact path is not certain, but it is expected to dump several inches of snow across the Plains region and ice in Texas and the Carolinas, the outlet reported. The storm could cause thousands of flight disruptions, close major roads, and shutter schools, AccuWeather predicted. This is shaping up to be the most impactful storm of the winter so far, AccuWeather Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Porter said. The risk of ice, snow, and frigid temperatures is a dangerous combination. Ahead of the winter storm, a pair of low-pressure systems is expected to sweep through the Great Lakes region over the next couple of days, churning up lake-effect snow that could total up to 2 feet in some areas throughout the end of the work week, the National Weather Service said. On January 21st, more than 29 million people were under winter storm watches in states including Texas, New Mexico, Arkansas, Alabama, and Tennessee. Millions more in the Great Lakes region were under winter weather advisories and extreme cold watches, according to the Weather Service. The eastern two-thirds of the United States will face the wrath of an Arctic blast, sending temperatures down into the single digits and below zero in some areas, according to the Weather Service. An Arctic cold front will expand from the northern plains region today to the mid-Mississippi Valley, the Ohio Valley, and the Northeast through the weekend. Gusty winds will make already frigid temperatures even more dangerous. The northern plains region could see wind chill temperatures of minus 50 degrees this week, the coldest in the country. In Chicago, the high temperatures could struggle to get above zero, AccuWeather reported. Wind chill, also called apparent temperature, is a feels-like measurement designed to help people understand the dangers of exposure to cold temperatures. It combines the actual air temperature with wind speeds. For those in the upper Midwest, this weekend it may feel reminiscent of the Arctic blast on January 29th and 30th of the year 2019. At least 18 people died as a result of that cold blast, USA Today reported. Snow, winds, and cold temperatures in the region dropped wind chills as low as minus 50 across Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and northern Illinois, according to a summary from the Midwestern Regional Climate Center at Purdue University. It was among a series of violent weather events worldwide in January of 2019. These wind chills will pose a life-threatening risk of hypothermia and frostbite to exposed skin, the Weather Prediction Center said of this week's weather. Lows in the teens could reach as far south as the Gulf Coast early next week, the Weather Service said. The extremely cold air mass spreading frigid temperatures across much of the country will cause a major winter storm that starts on January 23rd and lasts through the weekend, stretching from Texas up through the Carolinas and into the Northeast, forecasters predicted. The storm will begin with a mix of snow, sleet, and freezing rain in the southern Rockies and Plains region through the Mid-South on January 23rd, before spreading toward the East Coast over the weekend. The northern half of the storm, which includes portions of Texas and the Carolinas, will bring heavy snow, while the southern half will see freezing rain across much of the Deep South. The storm's exact path and timings are still unclear. So snowfall totals could have some variability, forecasters said, but snow that falls won't quickly melt due to low temperatures. Between 6 and 12 inches of snow is possible across the heart of the Plains region, with 2 feet in parts of the Appalachians, AccuWeather reported. The Weather Service in Nashville said there are chances for up to a foot of snow north of Interstate 40, while up to half an inch of ice is possible south of the interstate. Now, finally, follow these tips to stay safe and prevent hypothermia in the cold. First, chances of frostbite and hypothermia will rise sharply by the weekend. If you have to be outdoors, wear multiple layers, hats, boots, and gloves. Stay dry and keep hot beverages handy. Check on neighbors. Protect your pets. And finally, know the signs of hypothermia and how to protect against being stranded in the cold. Trump to allies, I won't use force. He urges negotiations in feud over Greenland. From Kim Hjelmgaard, Michael Loria, Francesca Chambers, and Bart Jansen of USA Today. President Donald Trump said in remarks at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, that he was seeking immediate negotiations to acquire Denmark's territory, Greenland, and that he does not intend to use military force to gain control of the Arctic island. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force, where we would be frankly unstoppable, but I won't do that, Trump said. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them. Trump opened his speech to world leaders in the mountain ski resort by boasting about his record on the economy and telling Europe it was not going in the right direction. Trump arrived in Switzerland with European officials and business leaders on edge because of his aim to expand the territory of the United States in the biggest way in decades by acquiring Greenland. Would you like me to say a few words of Greenland? Trump asked the audience partway through his speech to scattered laughter in the audience. I was going to leave it out of the speech, but I think I would have been reviewed very negatively. He added, I have tremendous respect for both the people of Greenland and the people of Denmark. Tremendous respect. But every NATO ally has an obligation to be able to defend their own territory. And the fact is, no nation or group of nations is in a position to be able to secure Greenland other than the United States. We are a great power, much greater than people even understand. I think they found that out 2 weeks ago in Venezuela. Trump told European leaders the United States needs Greenland for national security because it is the only country that could defend the island from enemies such as Russia and China. The fact is, no nation or group of nations is in any position to be able to secure Greenland other than the United States, according to Trump. Trump said that Denmark fell to Germany in 6 hours at the start of World War II, but that the United States defended Greenland against invasion. We saved Greenland and successfully prevented our enemies from gaining a foothold in our hemisphere, Trump said. Without us, right now, you'd all be speaking German and a little Japanese, perhaps. Trump argued that his demand for control of Greenland is a small request after U.S. contributions to the continent's defense as part of NATO. What I'm asking for is a piece of ice, cold and poorly located, that can play a vital role in world peace and world protection, Trump said. It's a very small ask for what we've given them for many, many decades. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney used his address in Davos to tell countries less powerful that the United States, let me repeat that, less powerful than the United States, that they must act together because the old order is not coming back. Carney did not mention Trump by name, but the subtext of his speech appeared squarely aimed at Trump's approach to Greenland. Trump said in his speech that he would build a Golden Dome missile defense system over Greenland that would also protect Canada. He cast Canada as ungrateful. Canada gets lots of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not, Trump said. Trump said he saw Carney's speech at the International Economic Forum on January 20th before he arrived in Switzerland. I watched your prime minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful, but they should be grateful to us, Canada. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements. Trump has publicly mocked European leaders for trying to check his ambitions to take control of Greenland. His trip to Switzerland comes in the wake of an aggressive social media blitz he launched trolling NATO allies. He shared on Truth Social messages from French President Emmanuel Macron that said, "I do not understand what you are doing on Greenland," and posted an AI image of himself planting an American flag on Greenland. Trump is threatening to impose a 10% tariff on any and all goods imported to the United States from 8 European countries, effective February 1st, if he doesn't get his way. European officials have said that they are ready to push back, a dispute that threatens a new trade war. Trump has said the tariff would increase to 25% on June 1st if a deal to purchase the Arctic island is not reached. NATO leaders have also warned that Trump's Greenland strategy, if it ends in a military action, could upend and even end the alliance that has underpinned Western security since the end of World War II. Trump has publicly linked his interest in Greenland to his anger at not receiving a Nobel Peace Prize. He has also said the United States needs the island because of encroaching regional threats from China and Russia. Greenlandic and Danish officials have repeatedly said in increasingly strident language that Greenland is not for sale, and the vast majority of Greenlanders, polls show, do not want to become part of the United States. Returning to our front page, American Dream was born in protest. Social upheaval has shaped the nation since before its founding 250 years ago. From Carissa Waddick of USA Today. The founders called it petitioning for redress. Martin Luther King Jr. referred to it as civil disobedience, and his protege, Senator John Lewis, described it as good trouble. Whatever the term, historians largely agree. The United States was born out of protest 250 years ago and has been propelled forward by raucous social movements from abolition to civil rights ever since. Protests have been pivotal to the progress of this country, said Gloria Brown Marshall, author of A Protest History of the United States, describing demonstrations as the human spirit pushing against insurmountable odds for something that the status quo believes is not necessary. Today, Americans continue the deep-rooted tradition of public dissent, most recently through a string of nationwide demonstrations over the fatal shooting of Renee Nicole Good, a 37-year-old mother of 3 on January 7th by an immigration agent and broader Trump administration policies. Tens of thousands of people have taken to the streets in big cities and small towns across the nation, carrying signs that read, "ICE, out for good," and chanting phrases like, "Hey ho, ICE has to go." At the Golden Globe Awards, some celebrities wore black and white pins that read "Be Good" and "Ice Out" on their tuxedos and designer dresses to raise awareness for the movement. Other Americans have begun to boycott companies like UPS and Comcast that contract with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. President Donald Trump has threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minnesota, accusing demonstrators of attacking the patriots of ICE. The move comes as some Republicans have blamed Good's killing on tactics they say she and other anti-ICE protesters have used in recent months, including honking and blowing whistles at ICE vehicles to warn others of enforcement actions. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem called Good a domestic terrorist. the morning Good was killed, she had driven her SUV to the scene of an ICE action and had stopped her vehicle in a manner that obstructed traffic. DHS and ICE officials said Good, after being ordered to get out of her vehicle, tried to run over an agent. Video footage suggests she was trying to pull away when she was shot. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes past the hour. Continuing, Department of Homeland Security Secretary, I believe I read that paragraph already. Let me continue. Texas Republican Representative Roger Williams argued clashes like that between ICE and Good occur because of protests. People, he said, need to quit demonstrating, quit yelling at law enforcement and challenging law enforcement. Similar sentiments have been expressed during periods of heightened tension and demonstration since the early days of the country, even as the Constitution protects Americans' right to air their grievances against the government. Here is a short history of protests that have garnered the attention of the nation. First, 1773, Boston Tea Party and roots of the American Revolution. Protests throughout the 13 colonies paved the road to the American Revolution in the late 1700s. In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson told the British monarch that colonists had petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, Jefferson wrote 250 years ago. Most protests back then were peaceful, just as they are now, said Stephen Solomon, author of Revolutionary Dissent, How the Founding Generation Created the Freedom of Speech. But Solomon said, as occurs in most movements, there was a fringe element that took to violence and lawlessness. The Boston Tea Party is among the most memorable protests leading up to the Revolutionary War, and today is often heralded as a movement of heroism. Dressed as Native Americans, the Sons of Liberty boarded British ships in Boston Harbor in the dead of night and dropped hundreds of chests of imported tea into the water to protest a tax policy they considered unfair. Their actions weren't legal under British law, and not all of the Founding Fathers supported the protest. Though George Washington supported the cause, he opposed the destruction of tea. In a 1774 letter, he wrote that the actions in Boston will be considered as the cause of America, but noted that he did not approve their conduct in destroying the tea. A decade later, as the Founding Fathers drafted the country's new government, they enshrined the right of citizens to protest in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights, giving people the right to peaceably assemble and petition the government for a redress of grievances. Brown Marshall, who is also a professor of constitutional law at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, argues the two clauses were an intentional way to ensure protest would continue to be a force of change in the country. It's set up from the very beginning so that the people would be able to push back against their own government, she said. Next, the 1794 Whiskey Rebellion. 6 years after the ratification of the U.S. Constitution, a group of farmers and distillers in western Pennsylvania staged a protest against a whiskey tax enacted by the federal government, arguing that it was unfair to small producers. First, they tarred and feathered tax collectors and refused to pay. Then, in July of 1794, as tensions rose, the farmers gathered in what historians describe as an angry mob, with pitchforks and muskets, and pushed for rebellion. Washington sent troops to Pennsylvania to quell the protest under the Militia Act of 1792, which allowed the president to organize state militias in time of crisis. The law is considered the predecessor to the Insurrection Act. Today, Washington's response to the Whiskey Rebellion is viewed as the first test of federal authority in the then burgeoning nation. Presidents since then have invoked the Insurrection Act, which allows them to deploy federal troops to suppress civil unrest 30 times, most recently during the Los Angeles riots in 1992. Next, 1913, the National Women's Suffrage Parade. After decades of fighting for the right to vote, the women's suffrage movement led a march down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington on March the 3rd, 1913, a day before Woodrow Wilson's first presidential inauguration. It was the first march on Washington by a civil rights group. The 5,000 women in the march came from all around the country and wore elaborate costumes and banners. They organized 20 parade floats, 9 bands, and 4 mounted brigades among the marchers. Some of the marchers were violently attacked and jeered at by onlookers, and more than 100 women were hospitalized for injuries, according to the National Archives. Though it would take another 7 years before the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified, codifying women's right to vote, historians credit the march with creating momentum for the suffragist movement. 1963, the Birmingham Campaign and Civil Rights Movement. 2 centuries and countless protest movements later, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and dozens of others were arrested and jailed for organizing protests against segregation in Birmingham, Alabama. They were arrested April 12, 1963, after a court injunction obtained by the Commissioner of Public Safety found King and his allies had not obtained the appropriate permit for protesting. They had applied for the permit but were denied by city officials in the southern town that viewed their plans as a threat to public safety. Protesters described the injunction as raw tyranny under the guise of maintaining law and order. While imprisoned, King wrote a letter to fellow clergymen who said they supported his cause but called the protests unwise and untimely. You deplore the demonstrations taking place in Birmingham, but your statement, I am sorry to say, fails to express a similar concern for the conditions that brought about the demonstrations, King wrote in his famous letter from Birmingham jail. One day the South will know that when these disinherited children of God sat down at lunch counters, they were in reality standing up for what is best in the American dream, King wrote, bringing our nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the Founding Fathers. A year later, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was signed into law, prohibiting discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. King's nonviolent protests were credited with ramping up public pressure that led to the legislation. 2017, Unite the Right Rally. On August 11, 2017, hundreds of white nationalists and supremacists, accompanied by armed men, marched through the University of Virginia campus in Charlottesville, Virginia, to protest the removal of Confederate monuments. They carried torches and chanted, "You will not replace us," and "Jews will not replace us." The protesters, including neo-Nazis and Ku Klux Klan members, continued the rally a day later in the city's downtown, where they met counter-protesters and rioting soon broke out. Several people were injured, and one woman, Heather Heyer, who was 32, died when she was struck by a car driven into the crowd. Several people were later prosecuted and imprisoned for crimes and violence committed during the protests, including the man who killed Heyer with his car. President Donald Trump at the time said the protesters included some very bad people, but there were very fine people on both sides. Joe Biden, then retired from politics, said in 2019 that the rally and Trump's response drove him to run for president. The rally was widely viewed as a turning point that brought the white nationalist movement into public focus in a way that it hadn't in decades. It was the largest public gathering of white supremacists in the United States in generations, according to the Anti-Defamation League. Finally, 2020, George Floyd protests. The murder of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin on May 25, 2020, rocked a nation already in turmoil over the COVID pandemic. Videos of Chauvin kneeling on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes was replayed on phone screens across the country. Tens of thousands of people gathered to express their outrage, holding signs splayed with Floyd's last words, "I can't breathe." Some of the demonstrations descended into shootings, looting, and vandalism. Dozens of states called in the National Guard to help quell the unrest. In a statement at the time, Trump said he would ensure Floyd did not die in vain, but he called some of the protests acts of domestic terror. In the months and years after Floyd's death and the tumultuous protests that followed, states passed more than 140 law enforcement oversight bills to limit police use of force and increase accountability, according to the Vera Institute of Justice. ICE frees some held families, despite vow for zero releases, from Lauren Villagran of USA Today. Despite vowing zero releases, the Trump administration has begun quietly releasing dozens of immigrant families from a Texas detention center after detaining but not deporting them. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement released about 160 detained people, half of them minors, to a border shelter beginning January 17th, with plans to release as many as 100 to 150 a day over the next 2 to 3 weeks, according to the shelter director and other sources with direct knowledge of the releases. The reason for the releases remains unclear, but the families hail from nearly a dozen countries, including Iran, Russia, China, Vietnam, Venezuela, Guatemala, and Mexico. The sudden releases run counter to President Donald Trump's mass deportation campaign, which seeks to remove millions of immigrants living in the country illegally. Pastor Mike Smith of the nonprofit Holding Institute, a shelter affiliated with the United Methodist Church and United Women in Faith, received the families on Saturday, January 17th and Monday, January 19th in Laredo, Texas. Many of the parents had been detained by ICE with their children after attending their required immigration court hearings, Smith said. Several told him they had been detained for weeks or more than a month. A 1997 court order known as the Flores Settlement Agreement guides rules for detaining children, including with their families, and generally requires they not be held more than 20 days. They have strong family and community ties and employment that they want to go back to, Smith said. Tricia McLaughlin, Assistant Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, called the Flores Agreement under the purview of a federal judge in California, a tool of the left to promote an open borders agenda. It is long overdue for a single district in California to stop managing the executive branch's immigration functions, she said in an email. The Trump administration is committed to restoring common sense to our immigration system. Immigration arrests have surged over the past year, but Homeland Security under Kristi Noem's leadership has struggled to keep pace with deportations. The number of immigrants held in detention has ballooned as a result. What President Trump and our CBP agents and officers have been able to do in a single year is nothing short of extraordinary, Noem said in a January 16th post on X, before ICE began the detention releases. Once again, we have a record low number of encounters at the border and the 8th straight month of zero releases. The administration's zero releases promise is central to the president's immigration enforcement strategy. Trump and Republicans have skewered former President Joe Biden for releasing millions of immigrants into the country on humanitarian grounds. To avoid releasing immigrants, the Trump administration last year suspended the right to seek asylum at the border and ordered immigration judges to refuse bond to detained immigrants, among other policy recommendations. But Smith confirmed to USA Today that for months, ICE has also released detainees to them on occasion, typically those with extenuating circumstances, such as illness or medical need. But the numbers were low, in the single digits. The latest releases appear to be the first on a larger scale under the Trump administration. The releases also raise questions about the administration's motives, said Jenny Murray, president of the National Immigration Forum, which represents faith and law enforcement organizations on immigration policy. Is there a capacity violation, such as overcrowding, or does the individual case prove the family shouldn't be deported? She asked. Hopefully, it's a sign the rule of law is working. ICE bused the first group of families to the Laredo shelter late Saturday, January 17th, from the 2,400-bed South Texas Family Residential Center in Dilley, which is operated by a private company, Core Civic. Smith said several detainees described overcrowding in some dormitories. Some described being detained for an extended period with their children, shuffled between holding facilities, he said. Many of the adults, but not all, were outfitted with ankle monitors upon their release, he said. Many were similarly outfitted during the Biden administration. As for the motivation behind the releases, Smith said, "My best hope is that there are officials in detention centers that are serving their better angels." You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes past the hour. Continuing, migrant shelters along the border, often run by church communities, played a crucial role during past years of high migration, offering a cot and a hot meal to migrants and families in need. Excuse me. But dozens of shelters closed last year after the Trump administration slashed their funding amid unproven accusations that the nonprofit and faith-based organizations were illegally harboring or trafficking migrants. At the same time, migration all but dried up at the southwest border, so others shuttered because their services weren't needed. The Trump administration reopened the Dilley Family Detention Center, which lies about an hour south of San Antonio, after the Biden administration ended the practice of detaining immigrant families. Child advocates have decried the long-term traumatizing effects of detention on children's physical and mental well-being. In 2025, the Trump administration sought to nullify the Flores settlement that protects children from prolonged detention, arguing it represents an outdated constraint on immigration enforcement. A federal judge in August 2025 denied the administration's request. More immigrants are being detained under Trump than at any point in American history, since the internment of people of Japanese, Italian, and German ancestry during World War II. There were nearly 69,000 people in ICE detention, according to ICE data published January 7th of this year. The number has been climbing consistently since Trump took office. About 38,000 people were in ICE detention in early January of 2025 at the close of the Biden administration. Congress authorized $45 billion in funding last year to expand ICE detention. The surge in spending in the One Big Beautiful Bill has really transformed who is being detained and why, said Murray of the National Immigration Forum. I'm not sure people understand that for the first time, non-criminal immigrants outweigh the criminals in custody. In recent months, most of the growth in the detained population is among immigrants without criminal charges or criminal records, according to Syracuse University researcher Austin Kocher. ICE deported nearly 329,000 people in fiscal 2025, a 21% increase over the 271,000 people deported during the last full year of the Biden administration, Kocher's analysis of ICE data shows. Smith said the people released to his shelter from detention were part of the communities they lived in, probably for years. These are people who were probably your neighbor and you didn't realize they were in your court system, he said. They want to return to a sense of normalcy. Turning to page 3 of our front section, Congress takes big step to avoid another shutdown. Appropriation bills are moving forward. From Zachary Sharmelli of USA Today. Lawmakers in Congress are racing toward a deadline to get all their funding bills passed before January 30th to evade yet another government shutdown. They took one big step closer to that goal on January 20th, releasing the last remaining batch of bipartisan appropriations bills. Though the $1.2 trillion funding package still has some big hurdles to clear before becoming law, it has many eye-popping provisions. Including in the legislation are notable reversals of some of President Donald Trump's steepest cuts to government health and education programs, along with measures meant to ultimately reduce prescription drug costs for consumers. Because Democrats were at the table, this legislation staves off extreme cuts that would have raised families' costs and jeopardized people's health and livelihoods, and it instead delivers new funding for childcare, our K-12 schools, rental assistance, and so much else, said Senator Patty Murray, Democrat from Washington, the vice chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. She said this in a statement. The mega bill also would implement new accountability and transparency measures for the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement amid national scrutiny of federal law enforcement after an ICE agent shot and killed a mother of 3 in Minneapolis. After last year's record-breaking crisis, there is little appetite among members of either party for another shutdown, but time is running short to get the deal through Capitol Hill. The Senate is scheduled to be out of town for the rest of the week, and the House of Representatives is supposed to be out all of next week, including on the January 30th deadline. Representative Tom Cole, Republican from Oklahoma, the chair of the House Appropriations Committee, said in a statement that the latest funding package applies innovation and discipline to deliver results without waste. It's time to get it across the finish line, he said. House Speaker Mike Johnson echoed that sentiment. After years of Washington abandoning regular order, this Congress under Republican leadership has proven it can work as intended, he said in a statement. Congressional Democrats have been in a tough political position in recent weeks, trying to balance their heightening concerns over immigration enforcement with their hopes to avert another shutdown. As a result, deciding how to fund DHS has been a big obstacle in lawmakers' negotiations. Republicans ultimately agreed to impose new restrictions on DHS, including more de-escalation training for ICE and Customs Border Patrol agents and oversight of detention facilities. The legislation additionally restricts how DHS can spend money while mandating that the agency regularly tells Congress about specific spending plans. Representative Rosa DeLauro, Democrat from Connecticut, the top Democrat on the House Appropriations Committee, acknowledged the bill may not go as far to rein in ICE as some Democrats had hoped. But she said allowing DHS funding to lapse past January would have endangered other important federal agencies, including the Federal Emergency Management Administration, or FEMA, which is responsible for helping respond to natural disasters. The bill takes several steps in the right direction, such as cutting ICE enforcement and removal operations and reducing the number of detention beds, but it does not include broader reforms Democrats proposed. DeLauro said in a statement, "I understand that many of my Democratic colleagues may be dissatisfied with any bill that funds ICE. I share their frustration with the out-of-control agency." One of those colleagues, Senator Chris Murphy, who, like DeLauro, is a Connecticut Democrat, is already saying he will not support the DHS funding bill. Democrats have no obligation to support a bill that not only funds the dystopian scenes we are seeing in Minneapolis, but will allow DHS to replicate that playbook of brutality in cities all over the country, he said in a January 20th social media post. Rising healthcare costs emerged as the main sticking point during the longest ever government shutdown last fall. Yet lawmakers still didn't come out of the political fiasco with a concrete deal for how to reduce insurance and drug prices for patients. Bills to potentially extend special Obamacare subsidies, which were relied on by millions of Americans to afford their premiums until they expired at the start of this year, failed to garner enough support in the Senate to pass. The funding package released on January 20th includes some relatively modest components aimed at improving health care affordability. It would crack down on drug intermediaries and bolster funding for community health centers. Continuing, the legislation also would reverse some of Trump administration's cuts to health research, curbing a policy change under Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that has imposed a specter of massive financial strain on academic and medical institutions. Democrats were hoping to use the upcoming funding deadline to reverse at least some of Trump's efforts to dismantle the federal education department. In particular, they wanted Trump to stop offloading the department's responsibilities to other agencies, such as the Labor Department. They didn't exactly get what they wanted, but they got some concessions. The bipartisan spending package increases the Education Department's discretionary funding by $217 million compared to 2025, and it requires Trump administration officials to provide lawmakers with bi-weekly briefings about their efforts to break up the agency. Halligan exits post as U.S. Attorney. Departure comes amid threat of sanctions from James Powell and Melina Khan of USA Today. Lindsay Halligan has left the Department of Justice after a federal judge threatened disciplinary actions against a controversial U.S. attorney for the U.S. Eastern District of Virginia. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced on January the 20th. Halligan, a former personal lawyer to President Donald Trump, was a prosecutor who brought charges against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James last year. Those cases were dismissed in November of last year after a U.S. District Judge ruled Halligan was not lawfully chosen to head the office for the Eastern District of Virginia. The Department of Justice has appealed the dismissals. In announcing the departure on X, Bondi blamed Democratic senators from Virginia for using the chamber's longstanding tradition of allowing members from a state to block U.S. attorney nominations for their state. Democratic senators weaponized the blue ship process, making it impossible for Lindsay's term as United States Attorney to continue following the expiration of her 120-day appointment, Bondi said. Without Senate confirmation, Halligan was limited to a 120-day interim appointment, which a judge found had ended last year. Even under the Justice Department's view, that 120-day period concluded on January the 20th. The departure came after federal judge David Novak ordered Halligan to stop referring to herself as the top federal prosecutor in Virginia's Eastern District in court filings before him in a January 20th ruling. Novak described Halligan's continued use of the title as a charade and threatened disciplinary proceedings against her and any other prosecutor who continues using the title. In a filing last week, the department accused Novak of exceeding his authority. In his ruling, Novak said the department's filing contains a level of vitriol more appropriate for a cable news talk show and falls far beneath the level of advocacy expected from litigants in this court, particularly the Department of Justice. In September, Bondi purportedly appointed Halligan to head the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia after the previous head, Eric Seibert, departed. Seibert reportedly expressed skepticism about bringing charges against Comey or James, telling colleagues in an email that he had resigned. However, Trump later said that he fired him. "I fired Seibert, and there is a great case, and many lawyers and legal pundits say so," Trump said in the Truth Social post. Excuse me. Hours after that post, Bondi issued an order authorizing Halligan to be the interim head of the office. Before that, Halligan had never been a prosecutor. Within weeks, Halligan's office secured indictments against both Comey and James. Yet, on November 24th, senior federal judge Cameron McCowan Curry wrote that only a district court had the power to appoint a new head to the Eastern District of Virginia. Vice President and Usha Vance are expecting their fourth child, from Joey Garrison of USA Today. Vice President J.D. Vance and Second Lady Usha Vance are expecting their fourth child, a boy, in what appears will be an historic first, the wife of a sitting vice president having a baby. The second couple issued a statement on January 20th announcing Usha Vance's pregnancy that said, "Usha and the baby are doing well, and we are looking forward to welcoming him in July." The Vances have two sons and one daughter, 8-year-old Ewan, 5-year-old Vivek, and 3-year-old Maribel. The couple largely keeps children out of the public view. "We're happy to share some exciting news. Our family is growing," Usha Vance wrote in a post on X. No wife of a sitting vice president is believed to have ever given birth while her husband was in office. The last wife of a sitting president to give birth was Frances Cleveland, wife of Grover Cleveland in 1893. First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, wife of President John F. Kennedy, in 1963 had a premature baby, Patrick Bouvier Kennedy, who died after 2 days. During this exciting and hectic time, we are particularly grateful for the military doctors who take excellent care of our family and for the staff members who do so much to ensure that we can serve the country while enjoying a wonderful life with our children, the Vances said. J.D. Vance, who is 41, and Usha Vance, 39, met at Yale Law School and married in 2014. They are the nation's first millennial second family. Usha Vance told conservative commentator Meghan McCain in a June podcast that her husband sometimes talked about having a fourth child, but she felt pretty good about sticking with 3. The second lady didn't rule it out. Never say never, she said. In an exclusive interview with USA Today in December, Usha Vance said she dreams one day of returning to Cincinnati and the family's former home. But she said the couple's 3 children have had no trouble turning the vice president's residence at the Naval Observatory in Washington into their home. They have a full run of the place, the second lady said. When there are late-night party guests, they come down, take a look, then they run back up. They're really good sleepers, so they're not particularly bothered by any of it. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 46 minutes past the hour. And turning to the money section of USA Today, Greenland merch is popping up online. Items supporting the nation are growing on Amazon. From Greta Cross of USA Today, President Donald Trump is not letting up on his determination to acquire Greenland, and those in opposition to the potential seizure are showing their support for the Danish-controlled Arctic island. A slew of pro-Greenland merchandise has popped up online, including bright red ball caps that mock the classic MAGA hat with Nu det Nuuk embroidered across the front. The phrase is both a play on Nu det Nok, which means enough of that in Danish, and Greenland's capital city, Nuuk. Many of the hats also feature Make America Go Away embroidered along the side. While countless hats and t-shirts have been generated by Amazon and Etsy shops, an organization called Support Greenland has also released its own line of merchandise, including hats, shirts, hoodies, and a windbreaker. Purchases made through Support Greenland benefit Greenlandic children, an organization that supports the island's youth, and the Red House Greenland Foundation, which supports sustainable tourism throughout East Greenland. Though Greenland support merchandise serves as a statement to the United States, it also aims to shift the focus to important organizations across the island. Victor Schott, founder of Greenland Support, told USA Today via email, "It is important to use all of this attention for good. All of the profits from these hats are donated to the Bettering Greenland's Future," Schott said. Inadvertently, by threatening Greenland, he is making sure that more and more countries are funneling money into it. If he does not attack, then the attention and all of the hundreds of hats sold every day will only benefit the Greenlandic people and make for a better future and not an unsafe, unsure one. Thousands of protesters opposed to Trump's acquisition made a sea of red pro-Greenland hats across Denmark on January 17th. Some protesters chanted, "Greenland is not for sale," and others held banners that read, "Hands off Greenland," Reuters reported. As tensions continue to rise, politicians in Greenland and Denmark have expressed their gratitude for those showing their support. "I am very grateful for the huge support we as Greenlanders receive. We are also sending a message to the world that you all must wake up," Julie Rademacher, chair of the UAGUT, an organization for Greenlanders in Denmark, said amid the January 17th protest. Now, why does Trump want Greenland? Since his first presidential term, Trump has expressed interest in acquiring Greenland for national security purposes, pointing more recently to China and Russia's interest in the Arctic island too. Greenland is also rich with natural minerals like graphite, copper, nickel, zinc, tungsten, and lithium, all of which are used in the technology industry. Trump has not said he is interested in Greenland for its mineral wealth. Experts offer tips to avoid scams on payment apps. Many say no one app rises above the others, from Daniel Devise of USA Today. If you dabbled with Zelle, Venmo, or PayPal, you have probably wondered if any payment app is better than the others. Maybe you've wondered if you have to use payment apps at all. Payment apps can be incredibly convenient. With a few clicks on a smartphone, you can pay your share of a dinner out, settle a plumbing bill, or buy a bottle of artisan clover honey at a farmer's market. But we're talking about money here, and payment apps can be magnets for scams and fraud. The internet abounds with ratings of best and safest payment apps. Here's the quick takeaway. No app rises head and shoulders above the others. They are all offering a similar service, and one doesn't necessarily stand out, said Kimberly Palmer, a personal finance expert at NerdWallet. Excuse me. Here's a quick rundown of several major payment apps, drawing from experts at Consumer Reports, NerdWallet, CNET, and PC Mag. First, PayPal. PayPal is the most popular payment app by far, according to surveys by The Motley Fool and Pew Research. PayPal allows personal money transfers and a wide range of online purchases. You can send money from a bank account or linked card. Excuse me. Who uses it? Older Americans use PayPal far more than any other payment app, according to the surveys. Pros: PayPal is widely accepted. You'll often find it as a payment option on a retailer website. PayPal has high transfer limits. You have many payment options. And the cons: PayPal charges a long list of fees for business transaction, CNET reports. Transferring money to a bank account can take time. Now, next, Venmo. PayPal owns Venmo, and they might seem redundant, but the two apps serve different markets. Venmo feels more geared toward friends splitting a restaurant bill, while PayPal is a leading choice for buying items from merchants. Who uses it? Venmo is particularly popular among young Americans. Pew Research found that 57% of adults ages 18 through 29 use Venmo, compared with 15% of boomers. The pros: Venmo is a go-to app for many Gen Zers and millennials. It has high transaction limits, up to $60,000 a week. And the cons? Information on those transactions is publicly visible by default, CNET says. Venmo charges fees for transfers via credit card and for instant transfers to a bank account. Next, Zelle. You've probably seen Zelle on the menu of your banking app. It's a money transfer service that lets you send cash directly through your bank account. Who uses it? Boomers and Gen Xers are a bit more likely to use Zelle than some other payment apps, according to Pew Research. The pros: Zelle sends money directly between bank accounts without a third-party app. Transfers usually happen in a minute or two. And the cons: you can't link a credit card to Zelle. There are daily transaction limits. Next, Cash App. This app is analogous to Venmo. You set up an account, then link a card or bank account to send and receive money. Who uses it? Black Americans use Cash App more than any other payment app, according to Pew Research. Users skew young. And the pros: you can use Cash App to buy and sell stocks in Bitcoin. The app is easy to use. And the cons: there are fees for sending money with a credit card and for instant transfers to your bank account. And Apple Pay/Apple Cash. This service allows Apple users to make transfers and purchases. It works in tandem with the Apple Wallet app. Who uses it? Apple users. Pros: Apple Pay is offered at many retailers at checkout. It's easy to use on an iPhone. And cons: you need to use Apple devices. Which payment app is the best? Debate rages about the relative merits of different payment apps. The banking industry is partial to Zelle because the service is embedded on your banking app. Industry leaders reason it's more secure. If you have your banking app on your phone, then Zelle should be your first choice, said Paul Benda, Executive Vice President of Risk, Fraud, and Cybersecurity at the American Bankers Association. In an extensive 2023 analysis, Consumer Reports compared Venmo, Zelle, Cash App, and Apple Cash on safety, privacy, and transparency. Cash App and Apple rated high for safety. Apple got the highest marks for privacy. No one scored particularly well on transparency. Payment apps are not regulated as closely as debit and credit cards, especially in cases of fraud. Apps generally offer protection against unauthorized transactions. Consumers have fewer options when a fraudulent payment is authorized, which typically means a scamster persuaded you to send it. Consumer Reports found that apps often gather personal data they don't need, potentially to share with third parties. I would ask, why are you using that app? Where in your life are you being asked to use it? Said Lisa Gill, an investigative reporter at Consumer Reports. But payment apps are safer than some alternatives. Sending a paper check in the mail, for example, is widely discouraged. Payment app best practices. Here are some pro tips on the safe use of payment apps. Send money to people you know. The safest transfer is to someone you've sent money to before. If it's a new recipient, double check their phone number or app handle before you send anything. One great way to confirm an account is to scan a QR code, a tool allowed by most major apps. Send a micro payment first. If you're sending money to someone new, start out by sending 5 cents or $1. Have them confirm a receipt before you send more money. Turn on two-factor authentication. Enable any extra security measures a payment app allows. They'll thwart anyone else who tries to access your account. Use only apps you need. The more payment apps you use, the more accounts you must monitor. A little used account is especially worrisome, said Gill of Consumer Reports. Scammers target idle accounts. You don't want to open a Venmo account and use it once a year, she said. Hedge fund makes billions amid K-shaped economy. From Andrea Require of USA Today. A British hedge fund made $18.9 billion for its investors last year, marking the largest annual dollar gain ever recorded by such a fund, even as concerns about widening inequality plague the U.S. economy. TCI Fund Management, which had $77 billion in its coffers as of last month, made a return of 27% last year. Many analysts still expect another strong year in the stock market. In December, strategists at Deutsche Bank said they expect the S&P 500 to be nearly 18% higher, while Morgan Stanley forecasts a 14% increase. You're listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for Thursday, January 22nd, 2025, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. You will return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this first hour has been Jim Duffy.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Ken Kwiminski. From the sports section, well-grounded Hawk, running back Kenneth Walker III, fuels Seattle's Super Bowl dreams, by Tyler Dragon. Seattle Seahawks running back Kenneth Walker III noticed a certain demeanor from the San Francisco 49ers amid his stellar performance in the NFL playoffs divisional round. Walker rushed for a playoff best and season-high 116 yards and 3 touchdowns against a 49ers team that had little to no answers for the running back during a 41-6 rout January 17th. You can see it when they're breathing, they're tired, they're slow to get up. You can see it being demoralizing to them, Walker explained. We just got to keep doing that. Keep doing that is exactly what Seattle's offense needs to get through the Los Angeles Rams on January 25th and advance to Super Bowl 60. The Seahawks have won 8 consecutive games. Seattle's last loss, coincidentally, came against the Rams in Week 2. Seattle's rushing attack has been revitalized during its hot streak. The Seahawks have gained more than 160 rushing yards in 4 straight games, including 175 against San Francisco. The Seahawks have particularly found success on outside runs of late. They averaged more than 6 yards on runs toward the left end and on carries directed toward the right tackle against the 49ers. A lot of it coming on wide zone. You know, that's something that we've been having to work all year, and that's where we hang our hat on, Seahawks coach Mike McDonald said. So it's great to see it come to life. Walker has been the predominant figure in the resurgence of the Seahawks rushing attack. He has rushed for at least 97 yards in 3 of the past 4 contests and compiled no fewer than 133 yards from scrimmage in that period too, including 145 yards from scrimmage against the 49ers. It's really just details and execution, Walker said. We go over it, we watch film, and then we go execute it at practice, and it shows in the game. Walker has averaged more than 6 yards a carry in 3 of the past 4 contests, 2 games against the 49ers and 1 against the Rams. For him to have the success that he's having, it's super cool. Nobody is more deserving and excited to continue to block for him for another week. He's a dynamic back, and it's one of those deals where you just got to give him a chance, and he's going to make you right. Seahawks rookie guard Gray Zabel told USA Today Sports. It's one of those deals where you just got to give him a hole, just kind of block your guy, and he's going to make you right 99% of the time. It's unbelievable to block for a guy like that, and we have a lot of fun doing it. Walker is imperative for Seattle's offense going forward. Zach Charbonnet suffered a season-ending knee injury in the divisional round, and Sam Darnold is playing through an oblique injury in which he admitted he's going to have to manage the rest of the way. Walker's success on the ground eases the pressure on Darnold, who just recorded his first postseason win and makes life easier for the entire offense. It opens the offense up. Seahawks wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba said, "You got to respect it, all areas of our offense." Aside from the ultimate goal of a Super Bowl, Walker has another looming incentive to keep playing at a high level. The 4th-year running back is an impending free agent. Walker's performance to close the season could seemingly have a financial impact on the running back. There's no better time for Walker to prove his worth. His career nights in the divisional round showed his importance to Seattle's offense. Yet he would underscore his value with another superb outing in the NFC Championship game. And it's a reminder that NFC title game will be at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, January 25th. on Fox TV. The line is Seattle -2.5. The next article, written by Bob Nightingale, Beltran A. Jones, kick open hall doors. There was no need for advanced analytics or algorithms, no need for any public relations campaigns. Simply, Carlos Beltran and Andruw Jones were elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame the old-fashioned way. The Baseball Writers Association of America had elected only two center fielders in the past 45 years, Kirby Puckett and Ken Griffey Jr., but this pair, born only on a day apart, were voted in on the same night. Beltran received 84.2% of the vote in his fourth year on the ballot, while Jones received 78.4% in his ninth appearance. Beltran, who was a winner of the prestigious Roberto Clemente Award, becomes only the sixth player from Puerto Rico to be elected, while Jones is the first player from the island of Curacao. There's no doubt that today my life has really changed being named to the Hall of Fame and what this really means to me, to Puerto Rico, to our family, Beltran said after the announcement Tuesday, January 20th. I'm humbled. Just look at my story. Coming up as a Latino player and coming from a humble family, and now I have a plaque in Cooperstown next to all of those great players. Jones thanked former slugger Hensley Mullins for inspiring future players from Curacao to make the big leagues, and believes that closer Kenley Jansen will be the next player from the island to be elected to Cooperstown. We grew up playing baseball, and that's all we did, said Jones, who will manage Team Netherlands in the World Baseball Classic next month. Hensley Mullins was the first guy to open the door for us and gave guys after him to give us a chance. There were so many guys who helped me in so many ways. To be the first player to make it from Curacao is a great honor. If you saw Beltran and Jones play, you knew these two center fielders were Hall of Famers. If you asked their former teammates, managers, coaches, and opponents, you knew these two players were Hall of Famers. All you had to do is watch and listen. Hall of Famer Willie Mays told Jones one day by the batting cage in San Francisco that he was the best center fielder he's ever seen. Atlanta's dynasty included 6 Hall of Famers, and every single one said the Hall wouldn't be complete until Jones joined them. I didn't play this game to be a Hall of Famer, but to win, Jones said. We built teams to win championships. We won our division 14 years in a row. I was proud to be part of that. Jones was a meteor who burst onto the scene in the 1996 World Series, won 10 Gold Glove awards in his first 10 seasons, and was widely considered not only the greatest defensive outfielder of his era, but one of the greatest ever. Mays and Roberto Clemente are the only outfielders in history to win more Gold Glove awards. If his career did not crater after 11 years with Atlanta, hitting just .210 with a .740 OPS and 66 homers his last 5 seasons, covering 434 games, he might have been a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Beltran was a fabulous 5-tool player and had some of the greatest baseball acumen of anyone in the game. A 9-time All-Star and 3-time Gold Glove winner, Beltran hit .279 with 435 homers and 1,587 RBIs in 20 seasons. He also had one of the greatest resumes in postseason history: .307 batting average, 16 home runs, and 42 RBIs. To be linked to Roberto Clemente, Roberto Alomar, Pudge Rodriguez really means a lot, Beltran said. I will continue to do what I love, and that's to promote the game and continue to help the kids here on the island. Hopefully, we can create more opportunities for the Latino players. If Beltran had retired just 1 year earlier and didn't play for the 2017 Houston Astros, who were later caught illegally stealing signs during the entire season, he likely would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. People share or people talk about what happened with the Astros, Beltran said, but I feel a lot of times there are agendas that are not positive. But when I look in my career, you're going to go through ups and downs in life. You're going to make good decisions and so-so decisions. You're also going to make bad decisions. Being back in the game of baseball, I still receive a lot of love from the players, the teammates that I had inside the clubhouse. They know the type of person that I am, but at the same time understand that's also a story I have to deal with. After being fired as the New York Mets manager in 2020, without managing a game in the wake of the Astros scandal, Beltran says he'd be open again if someone gives him an opportunity. For now, he's content working in player development for the Mets. The election certainly took longer than each hoped, but the wait made the center fielders appreciate the honor even more on this day, with Beltran even FaceTiming Jones after the results were announced. Besides, once you're in the Hall of Fame, all that matters is that you're in baseball's most prestigious club. There are no designations on your plaque for how many years it took for election. All that matters is that you're hanging in the gallery alongside Babe Ruth and Bob Gibson. As a baseball player, we know how hard it is just to get into the Baseball Hall of Fame, and once you do, it's one of those things you'll never forget, Jones said. So to be in a class with all of those greats, all of those legends that you watch videos, the guys that you followed for a long time, to be on the same stage with them is such a great honor. Jones and Beltran each had warts on their resumes, but really it's no difference than anyone else in the Hall of Fame. Yankees closer Mariano Rivera remains the only player the baseball writers thought was perfect, giving him 100% of the vote. Their inclusion might open the door for others behind them. Now that Beltran is the first player to be elected into the Hall of Fame from the Astros cheating scandal, Jose Altuve be blocked from the Hall of Fame when his name arrives, or anyone else from that team. And now that Jones is in the Hall of Fame, could this assist Torrey Hunter's candidacy with his 9 Gold Gloves, 353 homers, and 2,452 hits, 519 more than Jones? Certainly it has to be a boost for Kenny Lofton, 6-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove winner, 2,428 hits, who was off the BBWAA ballot after 1 year, but remains eligible for election on the Contemporary Era Committee when it meets again in 3 years. We'll discover the ramifications of their inclusion in future Hall of Fame elections. All that matters today is that Beltran and Jones are Hall of Famers now and forever. As a reminder, you are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 14 minutes past the hour. Next, McCarthy could be perfect fit for Steelers by Nate Davis. The Pittsburgh Steelers have been one of the NFL's Tiffany franchises for more than 5 decades. Still are, too, even if there may be light a few carrots in recent years. But an organization that was once wed to playoff success and often to the Lombardi Trophy, capturing it a record-tying 6 times, has been relegated to the Super Bowl friend zone for most of the past 15 seasons, reaching the AFC Championship game just once during that period. That isn't intended as a shot at Mike Tomlin, who's almost certainly a future Hall of Famer and somehow managed to never have a losing season in 19 seasons in Western PA. And he kept this team relevant despite quite a few factors stacked against him. Baltimore Ravens, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, a culture that loathes a rebuild, a declining Ben Roethlisberger, an unspooling Antonio Brown, and a misguided Le'Veon Bell, for starters. And the league also evolved quite a bit during the Tomlin era, skewing toward a model that favored offense and away from the teeth-rattling defense Pittsburgh historically played. Incorporating more college concepts plus more creative roster engineering, the Steelers historically loathe to making significant draft trades or routine free agency splashes. With that as a backdrop to Tomlin's departure, it's really a logical time for the Steelers to reevaluate their long-held philosophies and priorities, which makes their courting of former NFL head coach Mike McCarthy so compelling. NFL Network's Tom Pelissero reported that McCarthy was scheduled to interview with Pittsburgh on Wednesday, January 21st, and had previously withdrawn from consideration for the Tennessee Titans job before it went to Robert Saleh, and was focused on the Steelers at the expense of any interest in him elsewhere. And while it's premature to suggest McCarthy will get the job, or is even a front-runner for it, there are at least 4 reasons he might be the ideal pivot for the Steelers. A Yinzer through and through, McCarthy was raised in and around the Steel City and was an assistant coach for Pitt at the beginning of his career before he made the leap to the NFL in 1993. He even worked at toll booths on the Pennsylvania Turnpike to make extra money while working his way through graduate school. I don't want to disrespect the Pennsylvania Turnpike. I did my job and I studied while I was there when there were no cars coming through the booth, said McCarthy, during the lead-up to Super Bowl 45, where his Green Bay Packers ultimately defeated Tomlin's Steelers in their most recent Super Sunday appearance in 2011. It was a good experience. I always felt that was the normal way. You have summer jobs, you do those types of things, and I'm glad I took the path that I did, as far as a young man back then being exposed to those types of things. Beyond that, McCarthy fully understands the Steelers' legacy, cachet, and the weight of being a steward for such an operation, and that he'll have to periodically talk to Pat McAfee and company. It also wouldn't hurt from a PR perspective that he knows his way around town and where the good eateries are aside from Primanti Brothers. His last 3 NFL employers have been the San Francisco 49ers, offensive coordinator, Packers head coach, and Dallas Cowboys head coach, which is to say he knows something about working for a blue blood club whose fans are perpetually in Super Bowl or bust mode. He delivered the Pack their 4th Lombardi trophy, got them close several other times, and was as successful a coach as the Cowboys have had in the past 30 years, stringing together 3 consecutive 12-win seasons from 2021 to 2023. McCarthy's 185 victories rank 15th in NFL history. His 11 playoff wins trail only Andy Reid at 28 and John Harbaugh at 13 among active coaches. This dream job wouldn't be too much for him. It might also be nice not having to constantly defer to a hyper-involved owner the way he did in Dallas. Did his system get a little stale by the end in Green Bay? Maybe. Did McCarthy do extensive self-scouting and dive into other offensive approaches following his mid-season firing in Titletown in 2018? You bet he did. And the results spoke for themselves. The Cowboys scored the most points in the league in 2021 and 2023 and ranked 4th in 2022. The Steelers haven't had a top 5 scoring offense in a decade, ranking 4th in 2015, which was the only time they've ranked that high in the past 30 seasons. The Rooney family has obviously had great success identifying and hiring little-known 30-something defensive coaches, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Tomlin, integrating them into the organizational DNA and growing them into legends. And maybe it's tempting to swing for a fourth home run with the likes of Jesse Minter, Chris Shula, Ejiro Evero, or Anthony Weaver. Yet this might be the perfect time to try something new. Yes, McCarthy is 62. When few in Pittsburgh have been satisfied with the recent results, namely 7 consecutive and decisive postseason defeats, often besmirched by repugnant offensive performances. It's as compelling a reason as any to pursue McCarthy, who basically isn't a 15-year hire by definition. Rodgers, whose one-year contract with the team expires in March, isn't a long-term hire either. And maybe he's had enough, now 42 years old, and according to The Athletic, in tears at the team meeting after Tomlin announced that he was stepping down, not 24 hours after Pittsburgh was blown out by the Houston Texans in the wild card round. But here's the rub. Team owner Art Rooney II has said he doesn't want to rebuild or be non-competitive. And it's worth noting those were the marching orders Tomlin took so much heat for executing while expending a blast furnace's worth of sweat equity, getting to 9 or 10 wins ahead of an early playoff exit. Also, this isn't a good year to find a QB1 in the draft or free agency, though it might be an excellent one to acquire a developmental prospect, if not merely giving 2025 sixth-rounder Will Howard more exposure to the 4-time league MVP. Either way, trying to woo Rodgers back could be the best play given how quickly and substantially the locker room embraced him. And ICYMI, the 2025 season, was almost unequivocally his best since he won his last MVP award in 2021. And though there were reports the quarterback and McCarthy had something of a rift when the latter was fired in Green Bay, Rodgers has publicly and stridently debunked the notion. But if Rodgers wants to play, aside from potentially pitching himself anew to the Minnesota Vikings, there doesn't seem to be a more optimal set of circumstances than reuniting with McCarthy and the Steelers for however much longer he is willing and able. And now, switching to professional golf, putting. Amex win motivated Sepp Straka by Larry Bohannon, Palm Springs, California. It might seem like a small change, a minor adjustment, but for Sepp Straka, it helped him take what had been a solid PGA Tour career to another level in 2025. I would say definitely I targeted the putting in the offseason before last year, said Straka, whose win at the American Express in 2025 was the start of the best year of his PGA Tour career. I changed my putting grip a little bit more along the lifeline of my left hand and less in the fingers. That had a huge impact on my year. A better putting year led to greater consistency for Straka, the Austrian star who played his college golf at the University of Georgia. The win at the American Express was the first of 2 victories and 13 top 25 finishes on tour for Straka. It also helped lead Straka to a second berth on the European Ryder Cup team and an appearance in the PGA Tour's season-ending Tour Championship. Straka said it was no doubt the best year of his career. His wins at the American Express and the signature Truist Championship doubled his win total since joining the tour in the 2018-19 season as a rookie after a strong career at the University of Georgia. The numbers back up Straka's claims about better putting in 2025. Now 32, Straka finished a career-best 19th in total putting on the tour last year, leading to more chances for wins, he said. The year before that, obviously, I felt like I hit the ball a little bit better than last year, Straka said. I was just able to take advantage of good ball striking last year. When the ball striking was on, I was contending for wins instead of finishing 5th to 10th. When it wasn't on, I was still giving myself a chance to have a good week, so I think that was huge. Straka's win at La Quinta was almost routine on Sunday as he started the final 18 holes at 23 under with a 4-shot lead over Justin Lower. He finished with a 2 under 70 on the stadium course and a 2-shot win over charging Justin Thomas. I came out and everyone was firing early. It was kind of nice, Straka said. I think the whole group made birdie on the first hole. It was nice to get the birdies to kind of set the tone and settle nerves a little bit. I just kind of kept my foot on the gas for most of the day until the last few holes, or maybe a little bit more of a defensive strategy, and the nerves kind of led to a bogey or two. So it was a special day. It was a lot of fun to try and compete and try and win that tournament. Even without the improved putting of 2025, Straka had already proved himself a solid player on the PGA Tour. With 2 wins and 2 playoff losses in his career before 2025, Straka was not only a familiar name on PGA Tour leaderboards, but was able to earn a Ryder Cup berth for Europe in 2023. The 2 wins in 2025 easily put him back on the European team in 2025, where he was part of the European victory. The first 2 days went perfectly to plan, and as Sunday always does, it gets a little tight, a little tighter than what we would have wanted, Straka said, after watching the United States' massive comeback and Sunday singles fall just short. But that made it a little more fun, being able to be on that 18th green when Shane Lowry made that putt to retain the cup. It was really a special memory I will never forget, and the party after was epic as well. While it was a career year on the course, it was also a year shortened as Straka's second child, Thomas, was born prematurely. Straka and his wife, Paige, waited for the child to eventually come home from the hospital, with the couple then caring for the family. Straka withdrew from the DP Tour playoffs, and his only start in the Final Four of 2025 was at the Hero World Challenge in the Bahamas, where he finished 3rd, 1 shot out of a playoff between winner Hideki Matsuyama and Alex Noren. Straka said his son is now much stronger and doing well. The big year has Straka, who was dancing just outside of the top 10 in the official World Golf Rankings. Looking at a season where he can set his own schedule, playing in major championships and signature events. But Straka is not the kind to set goals like winning tournaments. I am not a huge goal setter. I don't really like to do performance goals, he said. It's just kind of hard to quantify. You can do everything right in Palm Springs, and Thomas saves 3 more shots. I would have been second place. So it's hard to set goals like that. So I make sure I set my practice goals. It's kind of boring, yeah, just make sure I do my practice routine, especially on the road, and 3 or 4 times a week when I'm home, he said. Continuing with the PGA, Scheffler eager to start his 2026 campaign. When you are the PGA Tour Player of the Year for 4 consecutive years and are coming off a season of 6 wins, including 2 major titles, there isn't much reason to change things in the off-season. I wouldn't say it's changed too much, he said Tuesday, January 20th, as he prepared to begin his 2026 schedule at the American Express PGA Tour event at La Quinta. I had a few extra weeks off this year, and fortunately it wasn't due to injury. Just the start of the year started a little bit later for me. Overall, no things I would say were pretty similar for me in the off season. Scheffler is making his 6th start in the Coachella Valley event in 7 years, missing only the 2025 tournament because of hand surgery after a cooking accident on Christmas Day 2024. With the cancellation of the Century Tournament in Hawaii, the American Express is a comfortable start of the year for Scheffler. I love playing this event to start. You get to come here, kind of see where your game's at, he said. You get a good gauge of where you're at just based on you're not really playing in so many conditions. And you got to be sharp around this place in order to make enough birdies to compete. It's a good way to gauge where I'm at to start the year, and yeah, it's a fun event. The Desert Tournament is definitely not just spring training, said Scheffler, who has not won the American Express, but finished 3rd in 2020 and been in the top 20 2 other years. I definitely don't show up to tournaments trying to get my game into shape. I like to be prepared, and that's something that I pride myself on, Scheffler said. So I like to say that's a good gauge, just because it's different being in competition, I think, than practicing at home. You can do your best to simulate it, but I don't think there's anything like coming out here and playing and posting a 72-hole score. With a 6-win season in 2025, including wins at the PGA Championship and the British Open, Scheffler is now just one of 2 golfers to have back-to-back 6-win seasons on the PGA Tour since 1983. The other is Tiger Woods, who had 6 wins in consecutive years in 99 and 2000, as well as 2005 and 07. Since the start of the 2022 season, Scheffler now has 19 tour wins and 4 majors, the most in either category in that span. About the only change Scheffler made in the offseason, and it was a modest change, was switching to a tailor-made Quad 4D driver rather than the older tailor-made driver he had been using. Unlike other players who have had a hot year and face questions about how they'll keep it going for another year, Scheffler has already proved multiple great years in a row are possible. But he doesn't start the new season thinking specifically about another 6-win season or another major. I wouldn't say that I'm super goal-oriented. I always do my best to try to stay in the present, and I've been preparing to get ready for this event to start the season, Scheffler said, and I feel like my game's in a good spot, and I'm definitely excited to get out there and start another season. And why not start that new season in the sunshine, Scheffler figures. It's better than the predicted snow in Dallas this week. I love practicing, I love playing. I love competing out here, Scheffler said. When I'm getting ready to come back out and play, when I look at the off season, when I'm practicing, I'm thinking about coming out here and competing and preparing for that. I don't think about really much other than that. I'm just trying to get ready to come out here and play and compete and do my best. As a reminder, you are listening to a reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 33 minutes past the hour. And here's a little article from women's college basketball. UCLA pushing UConn for top seed by Mitchell Northam. UConn and Vanderbilt are the lone remaining undefeated teams in women's college basketball, while Vanderbilt is building a resume that could get the Commodores their first top 16 NCAA tournament seed since 2007. It's business as usual for the Huskies. In almost every metric, UConn is number one. The Huskies lead the nation in NET, her hoop, stats, rating, and Torvik. They're number one in ESPN's bracketology, the Associated Press Top 25 poll, and USA Today's Coaches poll. They are second in the newest metric the committee is considering this year, wins above bubble, where UCLA is number one. And it's worth considering the possibility of Coach Corey Close's Bruins usurping UConn for the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. Someone is making that case will likely point to this. UCLA has and will continue to play a tougher schedule, and the Bruins have more impressive wins. UCLA is first in net strength of schedule, while UConn is 6th. The average net of UCLA's opponents ranks 3rd, while UConn is 4th. The Bruins have more Quad 1 wins than anyone with a 10-1 record in those games. UConn is 5-0 in Quad 1 games. No other team has double-digit Quad 1 wins. Louisville is 2nd with 6. What could make UCLA's resume more impressive than UConn's on Selection Sunday is the Bruins will have the opportunity to pile up several more Quad 1 wins while the Huskies won't. That's the big difference between playing in the Big Ten and the Big East. UCLA, meanwhile, will have 6 more chances to get Quad 1 victories in the regular season, plus a few more in the Big Ten tournament. There's a scenario where if the Bruins run the table in the Big Ten, they'll have more Quad 1 wins than UConn by double digits. And that will give UCLA a real argument to be the number 1 seed in the Big Dance. Now we'll switch to the life section of USA Today. Appleton scratches the surface of style and identity by Claire Mulroy. Have you ever wanted to be styled by the same hands that created iconic celebrity looks for Kim Kardashian, Jennifer Lopez, and Ariana Grande? Step into Chris Appleton's metaphorical chair in Your Roots Don't Define You, out now from Hanover Square Press, a memoir that peels back the layers on celebrity styling. More than just hair tips, this book chronicles his life through bullying, his coming out as gay, and his divorce from actor Lucas Gage. When the British-born stylist looks in the mirror, he sees how those dark moments helped him transform. His first draft of his memoir was coated in Hollywood glitz and glamour. But a cancer scare made him realize he needed to start from a place of vulnerability. He tells USA Today he scrapped it and started anew. I hope in doing that it inspires someone that feels alone, someone that doesn't feel seen, someone that's asked the question, is this it? Is this where I'm supposed to be in my life? Was this my choice? Appleton says, whether that's a marriage or a friendship or a job, or even if it's just a haircut you've had your whole life, it's realizing you can own your own story. You can make a change. So here's the interview with Appleton. Question: Your roots don't define you. Kicks off with a foreword from Kris Jenner. How did that come about? Appleton asked Kris because I felt she's really shown how to reinvent yourself and to realize it's never too late to make a comeback. When she had a facelift, she was really open about it. We changed her hair. I asked her, and I kind of expected her to say no, honestly. But when she said yes, she would love to, I was very honored and surprised. I felt very proud of my journey to have someone as amazing as Kris Jenner to write anything about my book, or even to acknowledge it existed. What are your roots? What pushed you to be the person you are today? I wanted to talk about those moments and the bits of darker times in my life because I feel like people probably had a polished idea of what Chris Appleton looks like from social media, and I wanted to scratch underneath the surface. Being told what I should be and being told what was normal and how to live my life was something that I listened to from a young age. I was incredibly bullied at school because I did hair, and it was before I even really thought about sexuality. I was told I was gay, and I had not even discovered that myself. When I did come out at the age of 27, it was probably the time that I actually stopped and took a look at myself in the mirror. I think I made a career out of making other people stop and look. I just never looked at myself. I had so much shame and fear around people telling me I should be a certain way and act a certain way. You're open about your short-lived marriage to Lucas Gage in the book. What kind of transformation was that relationship? Every time I've been in a relationship or left it, I've always tried to look back and be reflective on what I've learned. I think where I'm at in my life now, I'm in a different place. I think I'm very much about realizing that sometimes the love you give to other people is actually the love I needed to give to myself. I think once you realize that, it's very self-empowering. Writing the book was very healing. It was a very healing part of realizing that, and very grounding to realize that it doesn't make you selfish to have self-love. It actually makes you whole, because a lot of people don't. Styling takes communication and trust. Have you ever had a just trust me moment with a celebrity client that paid off? There's a story in the book about Christina Aguilera where I did her hair for The Voice, and there was supposed to be 3 hours of glam. I ended up only having 20 minutes. I was very nervous. I just moved to America. It was my first big gig, and I prepped all these hair pieces and wigs, and because there was only 20 minutes, I thought this little hairpiece would look great. She's like, "Oh, I don't like hairpieces. I don't like wigs." I felt incredibly paralyzed, and I could feel myself just kind of freezing and time just going by really slow. I remembered this moment where the mother of my kids, Kate, and we're still best friends now, said to me on the way, "Chris, if you don't make this work, you're going to have to come home." I just came back to myself and I thought, I know what I'm doing. I've done this for 30 years. I prepped all these great pieces and I knew they were great. I was like, why don't we just try this? Just trust me. I tried it on and she was like, "Oh, I like it." Then the stylist said, "I like it." So I quickly put this piece in her hair and blended her hair into it, and off she went at a live show. Then when she came off, she looked over at me and she was like, "Everyone likes your wig." In that moment, I fully knew I'd done it. What other pinch me moments have you had in your career? Jennifer Lopez was the first person who saw me. I was in the UK and she sent me an email asking me to do her hair for her Vegas tour. So I deleted the email because I was like, well, obviously this is fake. Then they sent me another one and I was like, wow, maybe this could actually happen. When I was sitting in the chair, she said, "Oh, I've had an eye on you for a while." I thought, how does J-Lo have her eye on me? I'm just this guy from Middle England. It was a time where social media had started and I just started posting my work, and obviously people look. She said, "I knew you were the right man for the job." I remember being, wow, the power of social media, power of a brand. Who haven't you styled that you would love to? Someone that I've always found amazing was Pamela Anderson. I saw her recently and I never ever really got that starstruck feeling, but there was something in the child in me that remembered Pamela Anderson and Baywatch. I was in this small town and this was Hollywood. She was such a pinup. She was the girl. They're saying 2026 is the new 2016. How have beauty standards changed in the last decade? They've changed dramatically. There is more of a need for people to see real beauty and celebrate that in all forms, which I think is great. I think there is this sort of pressure that we all have of looking and being a certain way. I think my biggest passion is for someone to really be authentic to what their story is, whatever that is. If that means you wanted to wear a lot of makeup and only take pictures in certain lights, that's you. Or if you want to be makeup free and own that too, Pamela's a great example. That is powerful, not to be so influenced by trends or knowing what's right for you and owning what works for you. I'm in a place now where I want to inspire people. And working in the pinnacle of the beauty industry, I wanted to scratch away that and say, this is what it's really like. And there are days where you feel terrible. There are days I felt lost and alone in my life, then I have felt fulfilled and whole. It's really nice to be able to talk about that. What hair transformation should everyone try at least once? Go blonde. And now, related to television, Claffey's Growth is a Tall Order in Seven Kingdoms by Brian Alexander. Former pro rugby player Peter Claffey might be a relative newbie to Hollywood, but the Irish actor had a big leg up landing the role of Sir Duncan the Tall in the Game of Thrones prequel, A Night in the Seven Kingdoms. He's really tall. Claffey, 29, stands 6'5", which is as close as you could realistically hope for Dunk, the towering, low-status knight from Thrones, author George R. R. Martin's Tales of Dunk and Egg, novellas from which the HBO series is adapted. Executive producer Ira Parker put out a worldwide casting call looking for actors over 6'5" to play Sir Duncan the Tall. Claffey's frame and athletic ability helped him get in the door. His gruff but gentle demeanor nailed the deal. We were looking for as tall as possible in that age range. The book character is 6'11", says Parker. After meeting Peter, it really wouldn't have been anyone else. We were so lucky that he exists in this world. Here's what to know about Claffey, star of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which premiered on HBO on Sunday, January 18th. The Dunk character in Season 1 is all about an untested man stepping into a knight's role and not sure if he can play the part or survive in a deadly tournament. Claffey, who has starred in TV series like Apple Plus's Bad Sisters, playing Eve Hewson's on-screen boyfriend, and Cillian Murphy's movie Small Things Like These, channeled that pressure within himself, stepping into the Thrones arena. I was a huge Game of Thrones fan, so I understand the fan passion, Claffey says. It's daunting and terrifying to step into this as the main protagonist, so that definitely contributed to my anxiety. Dunk is paired with a cheeky squire, Egg, played by Dexter Soul Ansell, who stands about 4'8". That's not the only glaring height difference with Dunk. Claffey towers over his horse in the series, and it's a big horse too, Parker says. The actor says there were bigger horses, but his steed in the early episodes had to pull off tricks, and he's a ridiculously well-trained horse. The stuff he can do is incredible, Claffey says. Claffey improved his riding after a 2-month training camp before shooting began. I've always wanted to learn to ride properly, he says. They've turned me into a competent rider. He's even eyeing bigger steeds. Mine isn't as big as a war horse that would make Dunk look epic, Claffey says, but it is kind of endearing to look at Dunk being too big for his horse. Growing up in County Galway, Ireland, Claffey was a Lord of the Rings and fantasy fan who literally grew into sports and rugby. Rugby got quite serious early on. It sort of took over my life, says Claffey, who played on the Ireland national under-20 rugby union team. It sort of became my identity. But he avoided getting locked into bruising rugby mauls with opponents. I was in the second row, so I was locked in, says Claffey. My head was glued between two teammates' arses, being rammed forward by 3 other teammates. There wasn't much room for punching opponents in a scrum. Parker says the rugby skills help the character. The only thing Dunk has is size and his ability to just keep getting up after being knocked down, says Parker. If that's not part of being a rugby player, I don't know what is. Claffey played through injury when representing Ireland in the 2016 Six Nations tournament. I had really had concussive injuries and neck problems, he says. I wouldn't encourage this, but I didn't speak about it. I didn't want to miss the chance to represent my country, and things got worse afterwards. After some time off, he returned to play for pro teams like Connacht Rugby in 2018. I couldn't compete at the end. My heart was falling out of it, Claffey says. I was thinking about acting. I didn't leave because of injury. It was because I wasn't good enough. His parents helped pay for drama school in Dublin. It was hard to figure out a new identity. I took a chance, Claffey says. I couldn't have made it without my parents' help. Thankfully, it's paid off. The breakthrough parts have followed one after another. Parker says that Claffey is ever evolving, just like Dunk, with season 2 already filming. The thing we love about Peter is that every day he is exponentially better, Parker says. And from streaming devices, Vance ascends to the throne as Zeus by Brian Alexander. Behold the mighty god Zeus from Percy Jackson and the Olympians, as portrayed by Courtney B. Vance. The King of Gods makes his appearance in the January 21st Season 2 finale of the Disney Plus Hulu series for the first time since Vance, 65, took over the role from Lance Reddick, who died on March 17, 2023. Lance was a dear friend, and I'd rather he be here instead of me, Vance tells USA Today, but I'm grateful to be able to step into his shoes to serve as Zeus. When Vance showed up on the Vancouver set of Percy Jackson after the loss of Reddick, the Emmy-winning actor paid tribute. Vance spoke about Reddick in front of the assembled cast, including Walker Scobell, who plays the titular teenage demagogue in the adaptation of Rick Riordan's best-selling mythology-based book series. Life happens. I wasn't going to ignore that Lance was this character, Vance says. So I just said, let's take a moment of silence to honor Lance with your thoughts and prayers. That was the right thing to do. Bringing the stylish fedora to Zeus was Vance's "I'd." As the saying goes, the hat makes the man or the woman, Vance says. That was my little touch, and to be fair, it was cold. The hat also serves as a subtle signal to viewers that a change in actors sadly was required. You want to honor someone else's role, that portrayal, says executive producer Craig Silverstein. You know Zeus has been seen before, and yet you also know it's a different person who's going to bring something different. There's a through line between these two Zeus actors. Revealing details of Zeus's Season 2 finale appearance would be a spoiler, but rabid fans of the book series are aware that Zeus does not appear in Riordan's second book, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Sea of Monsters, on which Season 2 is based. But the need to see Zeus in Season 2 came up, Silverstein says, and it's an incredibly important moment that sets the template for what happens going forward in the stories. Vance says he just let Zeus be Zeus when playing the all-powerful immortal. Everyone knows that Zeus is the man, Vance says. You don't have to scream and shout, but it does get a little testy. The respect for the deity does not extend to his own home. Playing a god doesn't go down well in this household, not with Angela Bassett, Vance says of his wife of 28 years. She says to me, "Hey, Zeus, there's still some dishes left in the sink, and the garbage needs taking out." I'm sure it's the same if Zeus has a wife. And here's a rundown of the Academy Award nominations. The Academy Award ceremony will be airing on March 15th with host Conan O'Brien. And from the Best Picture category, Begonia, F1, Frankenstein, Hamnet, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, The Secret Agent, Sentimental Value, Sinners, and Train Dreams. For Best Director, Chloe Zhao, Hamnet, Josh Safdie, Marty Supreme, Paul Thomas Anderson, One Battle After Another, Joachim Trier, Sentimental Value. Ryan Coogler, Sinners. For Best Actor, Timothy Chalamet, Marty Supreme. Leonardo DiCaprio, One Battle After Another. Ethan Hawke, Blue Moon. Michael B. Jordan, Sinners. Wagner Moura, The Secret Agent. For Best Actress, Jessie Buckley, Hamnet. Rose Byrne, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. Kate Hudson, Song Sung Blue. Renata Rentsev, Sentimental Value. Emma Stone, Begonia. For Best Supporting Actor, Benicio del Toro, One Battle After Another. Jacob Elordi, Frankenstein. Delroy Lindo, Sinners. Sean Penn, One Battle After Another. And Stellan Skarsgård, Sentimental Value. For Best Supporting Actress, Ellie Fanning, Sentimental Value. Inga Ibsdottir Lilias, Sentimental Value. Amy Madigan, Weapons. Wunmi Mosaku, Sinners. Teyana Taylor, One Battle After Another. Best Animated Feature, Arco, Elio, K-Pop Demon Hunters, Little Emily, Zootopia 2. Best Documentary Feature, The Alabama Solution, Come See Me in the Good Light, Cutting Through Rocks, Mr. Nobody Against Putin, Perfect Neighbor. Best International Feature, The Secret Agent, It Was Just an Accident, Sentimental Value, Sirat, and The Voice of Hind Rajab. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for Thursday, January 22nd, 2026. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Ken Kuminski.
following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,